At number 10, we have the witching hour. Have you ever wondered why 3 a.m. is such a traditionally scary time? My friends, let me tell you about the witching hour. In folklore, the hour between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. was considered a time for witches, demonic entities, and ghosts. They would roam free at their most powerful. Also known as the Devil's Hour, the time of night was thought to be a peak of supernatural activity, possibly because nobody was awake to pray. Any woman caught outside at this time of night, especially in the Middle Ages, was arrested on suspicion of witchcraft, unless they could provide a good reason. Simply roaming free because you felt like it was not a good enough reason in the Dark Ages, and many of the women who were caught out at night were executed for witchery. There may actually be a scientific explanation for all of the bad juju discussed in the witching hour folklore. It seems that, oddly, ghostly experiences and apparitions tend to happen between the hours of 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., which includes the dreaded witching hour. It seems at this point of the night, the amount of melatonin in the body peaks, which could be a reason for the ominous occurrences. That or witches.
Number 9. Joe's Paranormal TV. If you have a paranormal YouTube show and you go looking through the woods at night, you're pretty much asking for trouble. You can't complain about it. It's like eating deep fried cheese and then complaining that you're constipated. It comes with the territory. Well, on Joe's Paranormal TV, one night he decided to go see what a creepy stretch of woods had to offer at 3 a.m. and it didn't disappoint. While Joe is trekking through, we hear some strange metallic banging at what sounds like voices. It could be some friendly campers, or it could be a crazy metal pot man letting you know he's about to murder you and then cook you in the pot he was just banging with. Then he hears what sounds like a baby crying. What the? If that wasn't enough, he comes to a clearing of what looks like a bunch of broken trees set in symbols. So this could be witches or a bear that was using them as a back scratcher. Either way, you probably shouldn't be hanging around the woods late at night if you want to keep all your limbs attached to your body.
Okay, so is anyone up for an urban legend? Next at number 8, we have the little baby ogre. I don't feel good about baby ogres. Behold this footage from a famous Japanese Kleenex tissue commercial. Child ogre. Creepy singing. Sure. But this is Japan, land of the eel ice cream and game shows such as Happy Pie Hell. This is normal, right? Wrong. The story goes that after this commercial aired in 1986, everybody involved died or met a horrible end. Isn't dying meeting a horrible end? For example, the woman in the commercial was supposed to have birthed a baby of her own, but it turned out she died in childbirth. Further urban legends say that if you watch the video at 3 a.m, the footage will warp and you'll become cursed. Some say it's 12 a.m, but honestly, one person's 12 is another person's 3, literally if you live on different coasts of America. So why is it cursed? Well, apparently that little ditty she is singing is alleged to be a German folklore song with the lyrics in German saying, "Die, die, everybody's cursed, everyone will be killed." Good. Somebody allegedly caught the video changing and warping on camera. Have a watch.
It's a fine day. People open windows, they leave their houses.
Sorry, I might have cursed you there. What's a little curse between friends?
At number 7, we've got Tony McClusey's black bag. Sometimes it's the people you think you can trust that turn out to be the most dangerous. Yeah, next time someone close to you tells you that they'll love you and always be there for you, be like, oh, I'm onto you. I'm not getting my eyelids stolen from the skin bandit. Tony McClusey was caught on camera late at night pulling what looks like to be a black garbage bag out from his car and taking it to a place to be disposed. Now, what is in this big old garbage bag? Was it some biohazardous chemicals that needed to be disposed of very properly? Or maybe it was a wedding gift that he just couldn't bear to look at anymore after his divorce? How about his lovely sister Gemma? Tony McClusey chopped up his sister and stuffed her into garbage bags before secretly trying to dump her body. Luckily, he's very dumb and got caught on CCTV camera and sentenced to 20 years in prison for his horrible crimes. Apparently this was all over an argument, so next time you catch your roommate eating your Cheez-Its, maybe you should just let it go.
You don't know this, but when Che walks off after doing his bit, he clicks.
I click?
Yeah.
Every time?
Every time. Coming into number 6, we have the neighbor. There is an Ask Reddit thread which poses the question, what's the scariest thing that's happened to you at 3 a.m? There are some pretty intense responses, some including like ghosty woasty stuff. But when I think about the reality of being met with some situations, reading this truly terrified me. River Tiberius wrote this last year and got 1.1 thousand upvotes. They wrote, this happened a year ago. My family was all asleep at 3 a.m. when I awoke to scratching at the front door. I peeked through the window to find a beaten, bloody young woman sitting cross-legged on my front step, staring back at me. She was looking me in the eye. It was my neighbor. Her left eye was swollen shut. She had a laceration on her head. I opened the door and tried to get her to come inside. She was extremely drunk and hardly wearing anything on this cold winter night. She was babbling and not making any sense. I called 911, but when she realized I was calling for help, she screamed in my face, climbed over my chain link fence and flopped to the ground. She ran down the street, flailing her arms, bleeding and screaming. I thought her boyfriend had beat her up. They hadn't been known for domestic violence issues. I came to find out that earlier that day she'd got rip-roaringly drunk and then tripped and hit her head on concrete. The laceration on her head actually had stitches in it already, which is why I couldn't see them in the dark. When she got home from the ER, she stole her roommate's whiskey and pounded most of the bottle. She then just went berserk. Jeez, that was a difficult read, poor girl. Honestly, it sounds like she was in a really bad place. It must have been even more terrifying to hear scratchings on the door, but then open it up and know the person who turns up out there. And seeing them like not acting like themselves like that, acting possessed, that's pretty scary. I really wonder how her story played out, but like, I hope she got better.
Number 5, we got Bad Choice Noah's Bad Choice. I mean, it shouldn't at all be a surprise that someone named Bad Choice Noah made it onto our list. That's like a guy who's named Fall Off Skateboard Pete being in a fail video. It's just gonna happen. Well, one night Noah decided that he was gonna try and feed his large collection of snakes at 3 a.m. with the lights off, only lighting the area with a small flashlight. He did this because he thought maybe he would catch something paranormal on camera. I guess the logic is that ghosts like snakes or something. While doing this, one of his snakes almost bites his hand and then escapes from its cage. This could have led to Snakes in a Dark Room, which is the horror sequel to Snakes on a Plane that the public has been begging for. I don't think he ran into any ghosts, but being in a dark room and nearly getting bitten by a massive snake and then having it set loose without Sam Jackson there to save you is enough to make it onto this list.
Coming into number 4, this actually truly scares me. We have sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is so nasty. Landon and I recently did a list where we mentioned it, and honestly, I think that those of us who have ever experienced it can all agree that it is the scariest thing to deal with. Seconds feel like hours and you're literally stuck, unable to move. Sometimes if your face is in your pillow, you'll feel like you can't breathe and you think this is going to be your life forever. Honestly, it's really horrible. On scanning the internet, it actually seems like, oddly enough, a lot of people experience sleep paralysis at, you guessed it, 3 a.m. While we have a scientific explanation for the horror, a lot of cultures believe that the phenomenon is caused by ghosts. Yes, ghosts. They believe that a malevolent spirit sits on your chest at night while you're sleeping and literally tries to suffocate you. The legend is most prevalent in Cambodia, but Thailand have their own version called 3am. They believe that the 3am don't attack women, so a surefire way to combat the ghost and keep yourself safe at night is to wear lipstick to bed. Do you hear that, Jay? Scientists will tell you that sleep paralysis happens when you wake up in the middle of REM sleep, the deep part of sleep. The part that usually happens around 3 a.m, which coincidentally is the witching hour. So, science or ghost, you decide.
And now we come to number 3 on the list, and we got Mo, Sargi, and the Old Train Station. I feel bad for these YouTubers that have channels that are all about terrifying places. It becomes your livelihood. You literally need to go into some haunted places, possibly filled with demons that want to eat your lips just so you can make some money. I think I would rather be one of those guys that clean dog poop out of parks. Well, unfortunately for Mo, this is what his viewers crave, and it led him to walking down an abandoned train station at 3 a.m. While doing this, a bunch of super normal things happen, like the sounds of a crying little girl. And at points, there even seemed to be small, child-sized handprints on the windows. Is this because kids like to play around old abandoned train stations? Or because there's a scary little child ghost that's waiting to steal your body so she can live once again? I don't know, and frankly, I'm not gonna find out. The only mystery that I'm gonna solve is who's this season's Bachelor. I love trash TV.
Alright, I started this list by talking about witches, so I wanted to end my part with something magical at number 2. We have Dobby on CCTV. Dobby is a free elf. Had to say it. This was quite a recent 3am occurrence, and it looked like Dobby the house elf, or a tiny creepy troll. I'm gonna go with house elf though, because even though they're both a little bit creepy, one can make puddings float, and I think that's kinda cool. So 3am Dobby went viral in June 2019 when Twitter user JB tweeted this footage with the caption, "A lady posted this and said she saw this on her home camera this morning, very early hours. What do you all think it is?" The internet was quick to respond and say that it is the late great house elf Dobby. Dobby's dead though, so this is some like reincarnation stuff going on. In just 1 week, the footage got 31 million views. The footage was shot on CCTV camera outside Vivian Comas's home, and as of yet doesn't have an explanation. It seems like the footage has been declared as authentic, so it isn't doctored. Some say that the footage is of a kid in a funny hat, but like, why are these kids out at witching hour? Unless, you know, they're little demons. I think a lot of kids are little demons, so I'm gonna go with that.
And finally we have number 1 with Lou Rock at the Yellow House. Honestly, if you ever wanted to check out a haunted house, this would be the way to do it. Wait for a streamer to go into one with a live stream. That way you can see all the spooky stuff in moment. Nothing's edited. And if the streamer gets attacked by a ghoul, you can spam F in the chat. Lou Rock decided to do just this. He went with some of his crew to go check out a famously haunted house known as the Yellow House. While inside, I'm sure you can imagine some weird stuff started happening. First, he entered a room with a bunch of clothes hangers which started moving on their own. Then he walked into a space and heard what seemed to be a glass falling off a table, but no one else was in there with them. Then he heard the noise again. Then he also came across a rope that looked like it was used to hang someone upside down by their feet. There was also a room that had all the drywall busted out, like it's haunted by a ghost named Kyle. In the end, Lou gets pretty spooked and skedaddles out of there so he can live to live stream another day. Number 10. St. John's Mercy Hospital. Oh, hospitals are a hotbed for all sorts of weird things. I mean, people die in them every day. There has to be a bunch of ghosts and ghouls hanging around. If you die in a hospital, it must be like waking up in the middle of Mardi Gras when you become a ghost. Thousands of people just confused trying to find their friends. That's basically every festival I've ever been to. So a hospital at 3am must be the best place to catch some eerie things happening. Well, this hospital had what looks like a ghost browsing through a magazine. I mean, that's not the scariest thing a ghost could do. I guess ghosts get bored in the afterlife as well. Well, this ghost kind of flips through some pages slowly like it's browsing an IKEA catalog for some sort of paranormal bed frame, and then out of nowhere, the whole room starts getting tossed. Everything's flying around like a wrestler with a good insurance policy. Turns out this wasn't a ghost at all, but a tornado came barreling through the town and smacked right into this hospital in the middle of the night. Number 9. Summer Night Knocking. Summer nights as a kid were the best. School was done and you could stay up as late as you want, doing whatever. You could be out riding bikes, or you could just be binging food and watching movies until you pass out like a drunk bachelor. This redditor was having a good night until there was a strange knock at the door in the middle of the night. It was submitted by redditor Deadman V. He said he was chilling in his room late at night and he heard his younger brother calling to him from the living room. He went to check on his brother and his brother told him that there was a knocking at the door, so Deadman V went to go inspect. When he looked out the window that's right next to the door, he saw a young boy smiling back at him through the window. The kid was probably 11 or 12 years old. This obviously freaked him out, so he ran up to his parents' room with his little brother to tell them what had happened. His parents went to go check if the little boy was there and he was gone. Little did they know, they just let a ghoul into their home. No, I'm just kidding. The kid ended up being a neighbor and he was sneaking out at night trying to spook people. The classic prank of a smiling kid at the front door in the middle of the night. Gets them every time. Number 8. Roadblock. When you're driving at night, you gotta be super careful. You can't see well and your chances of running into a wild animal goes up tenfold. This was caught on a driver's dash cam. He was driving along when he comes across what looks like a roadblock set up with some traffic cones, but there's no cops around. Instead, there's a hooded man with some 2007 styled baggy pants who starts walking up to the car. Okay, if you're gonna try and pull this trick, maybe don't look like every dude who robs a convenience store and is late on his 5 kids' child support payments. As this rap video background actor starts approaching the car, the driver asks him a couple times what's going on. After a few non-responses, he decides that this is too much of a sketch fest and he speeds off out of there. Thank God this guy was probably too dumb to pull off this heist for real. Number 7. Peacocks. Alright guys, I'm about to educate you. So this one was submitted to Reddit by Redditor Catch Aaron the Sly. She was visiting her grandma way up in the country, and the thing about her grandma is she has a bunch of pet peacocks. I can't wait to get old. You can stop caring about what other people think about you and be like, yeah, I want a bunch of peacocks because that's what I'm gonna do, because I don't care if people want to have sex with me anymore. I'm a peacock lady now. It must be so freeing. Well, late one night she was on her grandma's porch when she started to hear what sounded like someone crying out in pain. This started going on long enough that it scared the hell out of her and she ran inside. She found out later that peacocks cooing sound exactly like a person crying out for help. I bet you didn't know that. Number 6. Slender Man at a hotel. Didn't Slender Man start as some sort of Reddit rumor? I'm not really sure on this one. Please let me know in the comments because I know I'm gonna forget. But what I do know about him is he's supposed to be some sort of supernatural being that likes to eat people or absorb them, and he looks like the cross between a faceless albino and a guy with a wicked tailor. And he might have been spotted in this hotel. A security guard was up late one night when he saw what looks like to be a tall man walking in the background of security camera footage. The part that was really freaking him out about this is there wasn't anyone else working in the hotel at this time, and this tall skinny man was spotted in an area where only workers can get to. So was this a supernatural being, or was this just a mistaken identity? Number 5. Fence jumper. If you look longly out your window, most people think you're gonna look up at the stars and find true love. Well, sometimes you just see someone running for their life. Redditor Zappa_07 was peering out his window when he saw someone jump a fence into his backyard. This guy was running around all scared. He hid in his backyard and then jumped into his neighbor's backyard. I want to speculate on what's going on here, but I know a dude running from the cops when I see one. This guy was trying to make a break for it. Number 4. Gas station. So this story originally popped up on Reddit and it was super weird. It's about a gas station. One of the employees and the owner started noticing that motor oil was going missing. They had suspicions that it was one of their other employees, a guy named Jeremy. Never trusted Jeremy. So they looked over the security camera footage and they saw what looked like a loop, because the same customer would come in every couple hours and take some motor oil. They then noticed that it wasn't a loop at all, but it was Jeremy coming in every few hours. It was super creepy. They were gonna confront him about this the next day, but he never showed up for work, like he knew that he was gonna get caught. Later, the FBI came in to ask questions about him, and he may have been linked to an arson involving motor oil and the death of an entire family back in 1996. Oof. Number 3. Cleaning home. I found this one written by Redditor Rolly Kirby Derby. She was home alone one night because her parents were out at a work function and she knew they weren't going to be home until late. She wanted to do something nice for them, so she decided to clean the whole house. She had all the lights on, she was playing music, and she started to hear a door creak open. She went to go look at it, and it was the door to her sister's room, but her sister wasn't home. Jokingly, she said, "Shut the door already," and then the door slammed shut. She freaked out, went into her room, and waited for her parents to get home. Number 2. Working from home. Here's a hot tip for people out there if you're home alone. Lock your doors. Hell, you should lock your doors even if your house is packed and you're expecting more people to come over. You don't want some lame stranger to wander into your house and kill the buzz at your party. Well, Redditor Hawk Singer was working home alone late one night, all by himself at 2 a.m. I know this list says 3 a.m., but I'm not going to care about 1 hour. I like this story too much. This is when he heard the coats move on the coat rack next to the door. This would normally only happen when someone opened the door, but it was way too late to come over, so he figured it was his cat jumping onto the coats. He went over to go grab his cats when he saw a man standing in his living room. Was he drunk? Was he crazy? We don't know. All we know is that he started yelling about where all his stuff was. He was very upset about that. So Hawksinger had to act fast, and he grabbed the katana that his mom bought him for Christmas and chased this guy out of his house. That's how you deal with problems, baby. You threaten them with a sword. And shout out to his mom for getting him the best gift that he's gonna have to hide from every single girlfriend. Number 1 on our list, haunted home. So if you're being kept awake by spirits for 6 nights in a row, you should probably start looking for some listings. Nobody likes bad roommates, living or dead. This guy was having just that happen to him and decided to vlog his whole experience. The best part about this is he said he would continue to vlog the experience if people continued to like and subscribe. If you're gonna put yourself through some spooky torment, you might as well get paid for it, baby. The freakiest part about this video is when his phone flies off the receiver.
Figure out what's going on, and it's happened a couple times already. And I don't know.
Now I understand how this guy is able to endure this paranormal punishment. He has a corded home phone. If he's willing to put up with that, that means he's willing to put up with anything. Those things are so annoying. Coming in at number 10, we have the Old Hag. This story was pulled from liveabout.com's paranormal section. Now, a list of scary encounters would not be complete without a few sleep paralysis stories. This story talks about a horrible looking creature that would come visit a person, and they called this thing the Old Hag. When the writer was only 16 years old, she started to get visits from this monster. She described it as an old woman that looked very much like a witch. Oh, and she wouldn't just pop into a room and stare at her from the corner. No. She would kneel on her chest and then look into her eyes. And just thinking about that makes it hard for me to breathe. Oh, and it would get worse than that too. If the writer was sleeping on her stomach, the old hag would come in, sit on her back, run her hands underneath her face, reach into her mouth, and then pull her head back. Yeah, that's not the kind of massage I'm looking for. Coming in at number 9, we have a surprise visitor. When you're sound asleep in bed, there's only a few things that can wake you up that won't upset you. One of those things is your pet jumping into bed with you. Now, this is what a lady from Tennessee thought was happening. She thought it was her little kitty joining her for a snooze. Well, it turns out it was something else.
Christine Humphreys is in surprisingly good spirits after sleeping with a slithering snake. This was the 3-foot intruder.
I mean, that is one way to make you never want to go to bed again. That would make me so angry. I love my bed, and if some gross creature came in there and ruined it for me, I would be furious. But this lady got spooked by the 3-foot intruder, jumped out of bed, and then immediately called the police, who put her in touch with animal control, and the snake was quickly removed, and I think she spent the night sleeping on the couch. Coming in at number 8, we have exploding head syndrome. Wait. What? I didn't know that was something I could just get. I thought I would have to have my head explode from some sort of weapon or a psychic attack. But apparently this can just happen to you while you're asleep. Now, even though this syndrome has the most frightening name of all time, it's not as deadly as it seems. It won't make your head burst open and paint your walls with your brain matter. What happens with EHS is when you're falling asleep or when you're waking up or in the middle of your sleep, you will hear a massive explosion that's just coming from your thoughts. Now, the good thing is when you hear this explosion, it doesn't come along with the psychosomatic feeling of pain, but people who suffer from this typically get a massive wave of anxiety that will flow over their body, which sometimes changes into panic attacks. So imagine being woken up at 3 a.m. by an explosion that only took place in your mind, and then you have a panic attack, and then you can't get back to sleep. Yeah, no thank you. At number 7, we have waking up to groping. Again, no thank you. I don't care if we've been married for 30 years. You better not be groping me when I'm asleep at 3 a.m. You don't get this great look from disturbing your sleep cycle all the time. Well, sometimes it can actually not be the person's fault. There are a ton of stories online from people who suffer from sexnomia. This is a very rare disorder where when someone is asleep, instead of sleepwalking, they will become very sexual, groping and grabbing the person they are sleeping next to. And the people who have this disorder will wake up and not remember doing any of this. People who actually struggle with this disorder will sleep with their hands and feet bound. Coming at number 6, we have fire. I don't know if anyone is going to be able to sleep soundly after watching this video because it's probably going to create insomnia inside your body. So an encounter doesn't have to be a person or an animal or some creepy demon hiding in your corner waiting to suck your soul out. What about just a standard force of nature? Every now and again, we think that we are safe from the real world, that the laws of man will protect us from everything that is big and bad. But then the laws of nature will come in and remind you what the real rules are.
I got a fire in my bed.
You got a fire in your bed?
Yes, and I can't get it out.
Okay, I want you all to get out of the house, okay?
Yeah, waking up to a fire in your bed is a great reminder that life can come at you fast. And I bet that was heartbreaking. Even if you put out the fire and save your home, your mattress would for sure be done for. Now, the cause of the fire wasn't clear in the news report where I snagged this clip, but after a little bit of digging, I think I found out that it was either an electrical thing or it could have been someone falling asleep with a cigarette in their mouth. Coming at number 5, we have footsteps. Of course, we got to cover another sleep paralysis story. I am so happy that I am a sound sleeper and I don't have to worry about anything like this. When I lay down to sleep, I'm out like a light and I'm not waking up unless it's time to get up or you hear that standard iPhone alarm. I think more people have a wake-up response to that noise than any other noise. But this story was pulled from Lucid Dream Society. The writer of this story said that when they were in sleep paralysis, they would be stuck on their bed, unable to move, just looking at the open doorway to the room. They would hear footsteps coming from down the hall towards them, and then they would see a dark figure walk into the room, walk up to the edge of their bed, and then just stare at them. God, would you just like kill me or something? Like, I don't want to just float in this constant state of fear. Coming in at number 4, we have ghosts. A classic one. We have to cover a ghost story, of course. Paranormal investigator Kashif Khan was eager to find some ghosts and went to the perfect place to make sure that he found some. Now, none of this video is in English except for a couple words here and there, so I couldn't really tell what kind of building they were investigating, but it seems like a rundown warehouse of sorts. But it's very clear that the building is abandoned. Now, even though I couldn't understand what he was saying, I could easily tell what was going on in the video. I mean, it's a ghost hunting video. It can't really get that complicated, but here's a clip. The whole video is 18 minutes long, so that is just one strange encounter that Kashif finds. I'm not sure what that was, but it sounded like some sort of deep guttural growl, but when he turns the camera, there's nothing there. Coming in at number 3, we have The Mystery Man. The YouTube channel The Proper People's Vlog wanted to push the boundaries of investigating an abandoned building by going into a forgotten insane asylum in the middle of the night. The whole thing is super creepy, but nothing really out of the ordinary happens until they come across this.
Oh shit. What? There's somebody there. No way. Yes, I see their light. They're out.
It's hard to see at the beginning of the clip, but you can see a light shining back at them. Now, this could have been their own lights reflecting off of something, but it seems that the whole crew was convinced that they had just stumbled across someone. They all get very spooked, and then they start working their way out of this creepy building and back to their vehicles so they can hightail it out of there. Coming in at number 2, we have The Voice. This story was written on Reddit by Sherpa Derpa Derp. That's their real handle, I didn't just make that up. They said that when they were a kid, sometimes in the middle of the night, they would have a nightmare about hearing a voice. The voice would always be counting up from the number 1. As the numbers climbed, the voice would get louder, more intense, and more frightening. They would jolt awake from this. Now, eventually, this faded. Lots of kids have weird recurring nightmares, and even though this one felt real at times, it was eventually forgotten, until he brought it up with his younger sister, who said that she had the exact same dream when she was younger. Yeah, a creepy voice that both you and your sister have heard. That's enough to make you want to poop your pants. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have a hand on your mouth. It's one thing if a sleep paralysis demon is putting its hand on your face. At the end of the day, you know that it can't hurt you. But what about a person who broke into your home? A Texas woman woke up when a man walked into her house, put his hand over her mouth, and then tried to strangle her to death. She had security cameras installed in her home, so here's some of the footage of the man trying to pull her out of the house.
I start screaming for help, so he takes off running.
Luckily, when she started screaming, it startled the man and he ran off, but I couldn't think of anything scarier than waking up to a stranger trying to kill you. On the bright side, her security cameras got a good look at his face, so police will most likely be able to track down this psychopath.
Starting us off with number 10 is the booty call, and trust me, this is the furthest thing from a booty call. Lol. So this one's from Reddit user F-, who shared she lives in quite a rural area near some well-known meth labs. Great, we love a very impactful start to any story. Now it was 2 or 3 am at the time and she heard some banging on the door and honestly just assumed it was her boyfriend attempting a booty call, which he did often, but when she looked through her window it was not her boyfriend. It was some stranger with a beard, and freaking out she backed away from the door. To make this whole thing even more horror movie-esque, her house was located in a cellular dead zone, and so she grabbed the landline. That too was dead, meaning she was royally The guy at the door was still pounding and shouting, "Let me in," and so the girl grabbed a knife and locked herself in the bathroom, genuinely planning on stabbing him in the neck if he came in, and honestly, good plan, I would probably do the same. Now at this point the guy was working his way around the house trying to find an alternative door to get in. The user realized one of the handsets of the landline may work, and so she got out of the bathroom and called 911, and thankfully it worked. She stayed on the phone for 15 minutes while the officer made his way there, and when he got there he found out the guy was actually just some drunk kid who was at a party down the road. He thought the user's house was his friend's and was trying to get back into the party. Little did he know he was scaring the shit out of this young girl who was hiding in the bathroom ready to stab him. Coming in at number 9 is the ex-boyfriend. Not mine, don't worry, I know my ex has made many appearances in my videos, he's all good. This one is a girl called Emily's ex, and honestly Emily, I prefer my ex over yours, no cap intended. Now she shared that when she was 19 her parents had gone away for the weekend and she decided to stay behind. She had gone to a party and was pretty drunk and pulled a Britney Spears and decided to give herself a haircut because she was moving to university next week, and I mean, honestly, what a better time to give yourself a haircut than when you're drunk at 3 am, am I right? Wrong. Do not do that. It's gonna go horribly wrong. Hopefully for Emily it did not, but I'm pretty sure it did. Either way, she cut that off in the shower, and when she left the bathroom she found a note in the hallway that said, "I was going to leave you a note, but I see that you are here." She freaked the hell out because here she was drunk, walking around the house naked, thinking she was alone, but she very much wasn't. She entered her room to find a guy with hair covering his face standing in the middle of her room. Like, who are you? She screamed her lungs out until she actually looked at him and realized it was her ex-boyfriend that she had dated 3 years prior for a total of 2 weeks, until he of course ran away from home. Boys, just problematic, honestly very problematic. Turns out he heard she was moving away and wanted to talk to her, so he obviously thought the best course of action was to break into her house at 3 am. Men are trash. Not all of them before all the guys like, no, I'm not trash. I said some of them. They talked and he left, and she later found out he was institutionalized with schizophrenia, so I mean, that explains a lot. Honestly, that explains a lot. But technically, if he ran away, did they really break up? There was no breakup because he ran away. Technically, they're still together. At number 8, we have the intruders. This one comes from Redditor Yo Soy Noi, and honestly, if this happened to me, I wouldn't have been half as brave. I honestly would have just locked myself in a closet and silently cried. So she shared that when she was 13, she used to live with her dad, and he would go on a lot of business trips and leave her alone in the house for a week at a time. One night, she was watching TV at 3 am when she suddenly heard the sound of footsteps walking in her front yard going towards her backyard. It then dawned on her that because the lights were on inside the house, she couldn't see outside, but anyone on the outside would be able to see inside. Now she considered calling 911, but then her dad would have found out, and that meant she could say bye-bye to being left alone at home, so she grew some balls and decided to investigate. She grabbed an axe, the only weapon she could find, and went outside. She shouted hey to see if anyone would respond, and she heard the deck chairs scraping on wood, and then 2 pairs of footsteps running in the opposite direction. Can you imagine? Like, I'm sure she went out thinking she was just being paranoid, but to actually have your worst nightmare confirmed, I can't even. Like, for someone to hear those footsteps, I would have cried, like I said. She ran and locked herself into the house, but then realized if she did that, she'd be trapped inside, so she ran out back into the street and saw on the right that 2 men were walking away from the house. Now they were about a block and a half away, and instead of just going back into the house and locking the door, she started chasing them, only to find out no one was there as she turned the corner. Where did they go? Were they real? Did they have a getaway car? Were they hiding in a bush? What was going on? Filling our number 7 slot is the cackle. Now this dude was having a bad, unproductive day, so he decided if there's one thing I can achieve today, it's doing the laundry, even if it's at 3 a.m. Honestly, I've never empathized with a Redditor more than I do right now. I stand my unproductive brother 100%. I support you. Now either way, his laundry machine happened to be in an isolated alcove in the basement of his house, and the lights in that area had blown and he just hadn't fixed them. Meaning the basement was dark as hell, but the mission to do laundry had to be done, you guys, it had to be done. So he ventured down there, filled the washing machine, and as he was halfway through the basement, he heard a loud cackle. Like imagine someone imitating a witch but 10 times deeper and hoarser, like she'd been smoking cigarettes for like 20 years. That's what this guy heard right behind him, and he did not even turn around. He didn't even breathe, he just ran for the stairs and never looked back. Honestly, we stand. We stand completely. Now at number 6 is the airport drive. Now this was shared by an anonymous guy who said when he was about 14 years old, his mum went to drop his dad to the airport at 2 a.m. so he was home alone till she got back. Now the airport was about an hour from his house, and around 30 minutes after they had left, he heard the front door unlock and open and then footsteps going into the kitchen. Now usually if his mum had come home she would call out and say hi, but these footsteps sounded heavy like a man with boots on. So the boy decided to call out, and then the footsteps abruptly stopped. He shot himself and grabbed his dog and hid in the corner of his room. Great move, I support it, I would do the same. Now a full hour later his mum came home and he rushed to her and told her everything, and the fact he never heard the footsteps leave the house. But the weird part was the front door was locked, so were the windows, there were no footprints on the floor or carpet, so till this day he has no idea what happened, if someone broke in, if they didn't, was it a ghost, or what was it? Coming in at number 5 is the toilet break. This one's from Reddit user Blythist, who shared that they are deaf but they lived in a house with 2 roommates who were hearing. Now they also shared that at night they don't wear their hearing aids, and one night they woke up at 3 a.m. because they really had to pee. Obviously as they're making their way to the bathroom they can't hear anything going on in the living room or around, and they notice the front door of the house is open, despite them locking it before sleeping and all the roommates having already been inside the house, like no one was coming. The user was freaking out because they could be getting robbed at that moment or about to be hit on the head, and they'd have no clue. Now at this point they don't even make it to the bathroom, they just run back to their bedroom and lock the door. The next day the user asked their roommates if they had opened the door or heard anything at night, but none of them had. So who the hell opened the door? At number 4 is the mic check. This one's short and sweet but legit gave me goosebumps when I was reading it, I kid you not. So this anonymous person shared that they sleep talk quite a bit, so they downloaded the sleep talk recorder app on their phone, and it basically only records when it hears sounds. So whenever the person wakes up you can play back a bunch of 10 to 20 second long sound clips, and they're usually of you just changing positions in bed, but at least you can track what time the sounds take place. Now one night the person was home alone and slept as they usually did, and when they woke up they were going through the recordings and got to one that was taken around 3 a.m. In the recording he heard someone say 1, 2, and it sounded like a German man, and there's no freaking way the storyteller made that sound because she was a teenage girl and she was home alone at the time, so who the hell was this man? Was he German? Who was he? How did he get into the house? Why was he mic checking the sleep recorder app? I'm very confused and I have many questions. Filling on number 3 slot are the previous tenants. Now this one was submitted by an anonymous person who said when they were 14 years old, they were on the computer for way too long, and next thing you know it's 3 a.m. and they're regretting all their life decisions. Been there buddy, been there. Now they turned their computer off and went to get some water and didn't even bother turning the lights on because everyone was asleep. As they're walking back to the bedroom, a very strong feeling washes over them of being watched. The person turns around and sees this cloud of white mist just floating right behind them. Now there were no windows facing where they were standing and no light, so it couldn't have even been a trick of the light. Freaked out they went back to their bedroom and forgot about it a few days later. Now a year later they had to move into the bedroom closest to that white mist spot, and they refused to ever sleep with the light off, which I mean fair enough, I get it. The person ended up finding out that in the 80s a guy who was renting the house was arrested for rape, kidnapping, and the disappearance of various kids in the area, and he was suspected for the murder of his wife. They never found her body, but according to him she just ran away. Great cover story, bro. Dogs couldn't find anything on the farm, but when this person moved in, their mum found a little boy's boxes in the toilet tank. They're pretty sure the white mist was either the ghost of the wife who was killed or the boys who were kidnapped, neither of which are ideal. Now at number 2 is the break-in. This one's from Redditor Mama_Catfish, who shared that about 6 years ago she was living in South Korea in an apartment alone. Now one weekend she was about to sleep and it was around the 3 a.m. mark, obviously because this whole video is about things going on at 3 a.m. Now as she's trying to find a comfy position to sleep in, she starts hearing this creaking noise but dismisses it as a cricket. But she hears it a couple more times, so she's like, clearly I'm not going to be able to fall asleep until I kill this thing, so she gets up in bed. She looks towards the noise which is coming from the kitchen and sees a freaking man climbing into her house through her window. The creaking noise was the sound of the man opening the window very slowly, and she lost it. She yelled at the man and he quickly jumped back out of the window, but the girl could not be consoled. She called her boyfriend and he ran down 11 flights of stairs and the kilometer to her house to see if she was fine. Wow, he's like the real MVP, hubby material right there. Safe to say they packed her bags and she never spent another night there. But also, like, what floor was she on? Like, did he just jump out of the window? Like, did he die? Like, how does one just jump out of the window and survive? And finally, at number 1 is Grandma. This one's from an anonymous Redditor who said when she was 10 years old, she was staying with her grandma for a few days. Despite having to go to school the next day, she still woke up at 3 a.m. because she really had to pee. Standard. Honestly, I hate needing to pee during the night. I just hold it in. She pees and goes back to bed, but when she gets in, she hears someone whisper, "Don't close your eyes, pretty." And from the whisper, she can tell the source is under her bed. The girl starts bawling her eyes out in bed, and the voice then says, "Do you know what I'm going to do to you?" Like, that is terrifying, literally. The girl runs out of the door into her grandma's room and tells her there's 100% a man under her bed. The grandma goes sicko mode and locks her door and pulls out a shotgun from her closet. She then yells at the door saying she has a gun, and the man shouts back saying no she doesn't, and she then shoots the bloody door. Then they heard footsteps running out of the house, and turns out he broke the glass back door with a branch, and that's how he got inside. Can we just have a slow clap for this grandma right now? Like, this woman, man, this woman. Starting us off with number 10 is the Churail. So Akshvank, the teller of the story, is Indian, and in Hindi and Urdu the word Churail means witch. His mum told him the story of her uncle in the 60s walking to his mother's place a few miles away from his own. Mind you, it took a while to get there and it was nearing 3 a.m. at this point. He went through a wooded area and met a gorgeous woman wearing a sari and asked where she was going this late, and she named a random place, and he offered to let her walk with him so she'd feel a bit safer. He already should have known something was sus. No girl walks alone at 3 a.m. in a forest. A few minutes into walking, the uncle realized this woman's feet were facing the opposite direction, like WTF. Thankfully, he had heard many stories about monsters and ghosts like that, so he knew some tricks to keep her at bay. He lit a cigarette and kept it lit the whole time whilst thinking of some Hindu mantras in his head. They got near a mango tree when the woman disappeared and he heard the most disgusting screech ever. The woman had climbed up the tree and shouted "Tu bach gaya aaj" at the uncle, which means "you were saved today." His uncle's advice to anyone that encounters a ghost at 3 a.m? Never look behind you or they will get you. I believe you. I believe you. Coming in at number 9 is the Screamer. Redditor Fecal Trumpet confessed when he was around 10 or 11, his mum began waking up at 3 a.m. every night and letting out a blood-curdling scream. The user, his dad, and his brother would be terrified every time she did this, and she would always say she saw 3 tall shadows standing over her bed and that she would then have a nightmare about being attacked by an owl. She did this 4 times a week for months, and every night it was the exact same story. You'd think the woman would have gotten used to the owl attack by now, but clearly not. Either way, half a year later, the screaming stopped and all was rainbows and butterflies until the movie The Fourth Kind came out. The family went to see it, and in it the woman sees an owl, has a nightmare, wakes up screaming, and then talks about the 3 tall figures. Mind you, other than her boys, the mum hadn't told anyone about this, so how the hell was it so common and a movie? Apparently these 3 tall ghosts haunt not one, but many or all of us. Forget Forget these actual ghosts, I can see a pile of laundry on my chair in the middle of the night and think that's a ghost. Like, there's just no hope for me here. At number 8 we have the patient. This one's from Redditor Zerbo, who worked for an ambulance company with his partner. At the company, all the EMTs had many stories to tell about Rig 12, the haunted ambulance. The user himself had never had any paranormal experiences himself, so he didn't really believe the Rig 12 stories until he experienced it himself. One night, him and his partner were working in a rural community at 3 a.m. Both of them were asleep, and a few minutes later he woke up to a muffled voice and he assumed it was his girlfriend talking, so he told her he was trying to sleep. Never get in the way of a man's beauty sleep, people. Never ever. Anyway, when he closed his eyes, he heard a deep male voice saying, "Oh my god, am I dying?" followed by a lot of heavy breathing. Both people shot up straight away, looking around and behind them for where the sound had come from. Then they heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator, and initially they thought someone had maybe broken into the ambulance, but when they checked the regulators, they were closed. They hadn't been touched. Suffice it to say, none of them could get back to sleep afterwards. Filling our number 7 slot is the angry one. This one's from Melissa, who said when she was young she truly believed she had a ghost in her house. Her cousins would come and stay over at hers quite a bit, and they'd stay up as late as they could, you know, just for fun, as cousins do. One night they were all chilling in the living room, and at 3 a.m. a glass of water just went flying off the table. Everyone was sure no one had knocked it over by accident, and trying to calm themselves down they blamed it on a gush of wind coming through a window or like an open door somewhere. Either way, the next few days around the same time, things kept happening. Cabinets opening and closing, forks and knives just on the floor. It was starting to get out of hand, and even Alyssa's parents were worried. So much so that they got a priest to come in and do a kind of house exorcism. After a few weeks, they found out an old woman lived in their house before them but was murdered by her husband. She was one causing all the havoc when people were up way past their bedtimes in her house. Alyssa's family moved soon after, but she still has nightmares about it, and honestly, so would I. Don't you worry, Alyssa, you are not alone. I'll have nightmares on your behalf. Now at number 6 are the debaters. This story is from Marissa, who said she was staying at one of her friends one night, and amidst pillow fights and talking about boys, no, we don't actually do that at sleepovers, lol, but they slept quite late. But around 3 a.m. Marissa woke up because of a noise. She was more than 100% sure she heard the kitchen cabinets opening and closing. It was so loud she went downstairs to check it out, but no one was in the kitchen, so she just assumed she was just hearing things, or maybe it was the neighbors. She brushed it off and went back to sleep, and when she woke up the next day, her friend was crying her eyes out. Marissa asked her what was up, and she said she woke up around 3ish and heard people in the kitchen saying things like, "We are not wanted here anymore, we aren't important." Now based on Marissa, we know the kitchen was empty at 3 a.m, so which Congress of Ghosts were having a meeting at that time, deciding they should probably not haunt this family anymore. I mean, civil, but still scary. Coming in at number 5 is my ghost. Yes guys, I try to include my own stories whenever I can because I feel like it just is more personal that way, and here is another one. Now it's not the typical paranormal ghost you're thinking of that flipped me from my bed or threw my cat against the wall. God forbid, please don't do that. This has happened to me so many times, it's actually scary. I'll just be lying in bed, it'll be 3 a.m, and almost immediately I just start thinking about the ghosts of my past. Should I have really said that? Was dating him a mistake? Did I really look cute with braces when I was a teen, or was I just fugly? These are the ghosts that stay with you forever, people, whether it's 3 a.m. or 3 p.m. At number 4 is the picture. This one's from Kayla, who said her friends were sleeping over at her place, and as a joke one of them said Bloody Mary in front of her basement mirror. Anticlimactic as hell, cause literally nothing happened, so after a while everyone just went to bed. At 3 a.m. Kayla woke up because it sounded like someone was pacing around in the room next to them, which was weird because that part of the basement wasn't even finished yet. As she was processing this, she realized her friends had also woken up from the sound, but no one was ballsy enough to check it out, so they kind of just bundled together and ignored it till they fell asleep again. The next day, nothing was really out of the blue, so the incident was sort of forgotten until a few days later. Kayla was just going through her camera roll when she saw a really weird picture. It was a picture of her friend staring into the mirror as she said Bloody Mary, except with a super dark filter. She knew that wasn't Instagram worthy, no I'm kidding, she knew she sure as didn't take that picture, and after asking everyone that came and realizing none of them took it either, I think Kayla had a legit case of the ghost of Bloody Mary on her hands. Filling our number 3 slot is It, not Pennywise, although in this story I feel like Pennywise would be the better alternative to what these people actually faced. Redditor Scooter said during his sophomore year at college, he lived in a double dorm with 3 of his friends. One night his roommate asked him what he was writing the night before, and the user was confused. The roommate said, you know, like around 3 I heard you writing something on your desk, but I thought it was a bit weird so I didn't want to turn around and look at you. The user was shocked since he was dead asleep at 3 am, so where was this noise coming from in pitch black darkness at 3 am? A few weekends later, everyone went home for the weekend except one of the roommates. He was plugging his Xbox into the TV at night when he turned around and saw a black figure run across the room. He dropped everything and slept in another dorm till the friends came back, and you guessed it, that was also at 3 am. When the user came back, he was talking to someone outside his door when the person just went white as a sheet. He said he saw something crawling on all fours behind the user, and the user pissed himself. The final thing he saw was the shape of a person made from mist hovering in their bedroom. It was just legs and a torso, but it was misty and hovering, aka a ghost. Whatever it was, it would only come out and show itself at 3 am, and the boys quickly requested for a new dorm after. I wouldn't just request a new dorm, I'd like request a refund. Like, give me my res money back, I'm not paying for this. I'm not paying to get haunted. Now at number 2 is The Girlfriend. Redditor Bill_Murray42 said a female ghost has been terrorizing him and his girlfriend for quite a while now. Their building was built in the 20s, so when a bubble on their bathroom ceiling expanded and then exploded, they assumed it was just old pipes. But when they brought in a plumber, he couldn't find a source of the leak, and it wasn't coming from the apartment above them either. All the pipes were working completely fine too, so it just made no sense. The same thing happened in their kitchen as well, and the leaking would actually stop when the plumber went into the house and start again when he left. But things got worse. The couple would hear booted footsteps in their living room, their door opening, and then his girlfriend waking up sweating from nightmares, all the while with a massive feeling that they're both being watched. One night his girlfriend woke up at 3 am to find the user standing in the middle of the living room just spaced out. He had no idea how he'd gotten there other than maybe being possessed by something. When his girlfriend started going on work trips, the ghost would target him even more, getting into bed with him, wrapping her ghost arms around him to the point the user could actually feel it. They asked the ghost to let them know if someone was there, and 3 bangs inside their bathroom followed. They theorized a girl must have drowned in this bathroom long ago, hence all the water, but in terms of targeting the user, maybe she's just lonely. Purgatory is lonely, people. And finally, at number 1 are 2 broken pieces. This one's from Eric Ogden, who said a few years ago he moved into an apartment on his own for the first time. Go you, Eric, I'm proud of you. In his bathroom there was a wooden board that covered a hole on the ceiling that led to his attic. A bit of a DIY solution, but the building was made in the 30s, so he wasn't too mad about it. A few months in, he came home from work, went into the bathroom and found that board broken in 2. It was a full inch thick, so either Bruce Lee broke it or something stronger did. He called his landlord and she said previous tenants had the same thing happen to them, but don't worry, she'll fix it. A month later, around 3 am, Eric woke up covered in goosebumps. He felt like something was rubbing all over him, and before he could analyze it, he heard this dragging sound above his bed. He thought someone was living in his attic for sure, and after 5 minutes of growing a pair, he went outside with a cricket bat. Good move. I do support that, Eric. Again, he saw the board had been broken into 2, but at least the dragging sound had stopped. His heart calmed down for just a second, because after the dragging came the whispering. Children's whispers coming from the attic saying it's your turn over and over again. Then his budgie Dexter started screaming like he was being choked, and Eric had had enough and ran and sat in his car and waited till sunrise. When he went in, finally he found Dexter half drowned in the toilet, and when he called his landlord again, all she said was, "Oh wow, you heard the whispering too." That's something you should tell a tenant when you're leasing a place to them. Oh, by the way, it's haunted. Just let you know.
Number 10, St. John's Mercy Hospital. Oh, hospitals are a hotbed for all sorts of weird things. I mean, people die in them every day. There has to be a bunch of ghosts and ghouls hanging around. If you die in a hospital, it must be like waking up in the middle of Mardi Gras when you become a ghost. Thousands of people just confused trying to find their friends. That's basically every festival I've ever been to. So a hospital at 3 am must be the best place to catch some eerie things happening. Well, this hospital had what looks like a ghost browsing browsing through a magazine. I mean, that's not the scariest thing a ghost could do. I guess ghosts get bored in the afterlife as well. Well, this ghost kind of flips through some pages slowly like it's browsing an IKEA catalog for some sort of paranormal bed frame, and then out of nowhere, the whole room starts getting tossed. Everything's flying around like a wrestler with a good insurance policy. Turns out this wasn't a ghost at all, but a tornado came barreling through the town and smacked right into this hospital in the middle of the night. Number 9. Summer night knocking. Summer nights as a kid were the best. School was done and you could stay up as late as you want, doing whatever. You could be out riding bikes, or you could just be binging food and watching movies until you pass out like a drunk bachelor. This Redditor was having a good night until there was a strange knock at the door in the middle of the night. It was submitted by Redditor Deadman V. He said he was chilling in his room late at night and he heard his younger brother calling to him from the living room. He went to check on his brother and his brother told him that there was a knocking at the door, so Deadman V went to go inspect. When he looked out the window that's right next to the door, he saw a young boy smiling back at him through the window. The kid was probably 11 or 12 years old. This obviously freaked him out, so he ran up to his parents' room with his little brother to tell them what had happened. His parents went to go check if the little boy was there and he was gone. Little did they know they just let a ghoul into their home. No, I'm just kidding. The kid ended up being a neighbor and he was sneaking out at night trying to spook people. The classic prank of a smiling kid at the front door in the middle of the night. Gets them every time. Number 8. Roadblock. When you're driving at night, you gotta be super careful. You can't see well and your chances of running into a wild animal goes up tenfold. This was caught on a driver's dash cam. He was driving along when he comes across what looks like a roadblock set up with some traffic cones, but there's no cops around. Instead, there's a hooded man with some 2007 styled baggy pants who starts walking up to the car. Okay, if you're gonna try and pull this trick, maybe don't look like every dude who robs a convenience store and is late on his 5 kids' child support payments. As this rap video background actor starts approaching the car, the driver asks him a couple times what's going on. After a few non-responses, he decides that this is too much of a sketch fest and he speeds off out of there. Thank God this guy was probably too dumb to pull off this heist for real. Number 7. Peacocks. Alright guys, I'm about to educate you. So this one was submitted to Reddit by Redditor Catch Aaron the Sly. She was visiting her grandma way up in the country, and the thing about her grandma is she has a bunch of pet peacocks. I can't wait to get old. You can stop caring about what other people think about you and be like, yeah, I want a bunch of peacocks because that's what I'm gonna do, because I don't care if people want to have sex with me anymore. I'm a peacock lady now. It must be so freeing. Well, late one night she was on her grandma's porch when she started to hear what sounded like someone crying out in pain. This started going on long enough that it scared the hell out of her and she ran inside. She found out later that peacocks cooing sound exactly like a person crying out for help. I bet you didn't know that. Number 6. Slender Man at a hotel. Didn't Slender Man start as some sort of Reddit rumor? I'm not really sure on this one. Please let me know in the comments because I know I'm gonna forget. But what I do know about him is he's supposed to be some sort of supernatural being that likes to eat people or absorb them, and he looks like the cross between a faceless albino and a guy with a wicked tailor. And he might have been spotted in this hotel. A security guard was up late one night when he saw what looks like to be a tall man walking in the background of security camera footage. The part that was really freaking him out about this is there wasn't anyone else working in the hotel at this time, and this tall skinny man was spotted in an area where only workers can get to. So was this a supernatural being, or was this just a mistaken identity? Number 5. Fence jumper. If you look longly out your window, most people think you're gonna look up at the stars and find true love. Well, sometimes you just see someone running for their life. Yeah. Redditor Zappa_07 was peering out his window when he saw someone jump a fence into his backyard. This guy was running around all scared. He hid in his backyard and then jumped into his neighbor's backyard. I want to speculate on what's going on here, but I know a dude running from the cops when I see one. This guy was trying to make a break for it. Number 4. Gas station. So this story originally popped up on Reddit and it was super weird. It's about a gas station. One of the employees and the owner started noticing that motor oil was going missing. They had suspicions that it was one of their other employees, a guy named Jeremy. Never trusted Jeremy. So they looked over the security camera footage and they saw what looked like a loop, because the same customer would come in every couple hours and take some motor oil. They then noticed that it wasn't a loop at all, but it was Jeremy coming in every few hours. It was super super creepy. They were gonna confront him about this the next day, but he never showed up for work, like he knew that he was gonna get caught. Later, the FBI came in to ask questions about him, and he may have been linked to an arson involving motor oil and the death of an entire family back in 1996. Oof. Number 3. Cleaning home. I found this one written by Redditor Rolly Kirby Derby. She was home alone one night because her parents were out at a work function and she knew they weren't going to be home until late. She wanted to do something nice for them, so she decided to clean the whole house. She had all the lights on, she was playing music, and she started to hear a door creak open. She went to go look at it, and it was the door to her sister's room, but her sister wasn't home. Jokingly, she said, "Shut the door already," and then the door slammed shut. She freaked out, went into her room, and waited for her parents to get home. Number 2. Working from home. Here's a hot tip for people out there if you're home alone. Lock your doors. Hell, you should lock your doors even if your house is packed and you're expecting more people to come over. You don't want some lame stranger to wander into your house and kill the buzz at your party. Well, Redditor Hawk Singer was working home alone late one night, all by himself at 2 a.m. I know this list says 3 a.m., but I'm not going to care about 1 hour. I like this story too much. This is when he heard the coats move on the coat rack next to the door. This would normally only happen when someone opened the door, but it was way too late to come over, so he figured it was his cat jumping onto the coats. He went over to go grab his cats when he saw a man standing in his living room. Was he drunk? Was he crazy? We don't know. All we know is that he started yelling about where all his stuff was. He was very upset about that. So Hawk Singer had to act fast, and he grabbed the katana that his mom bought him for Christmas and chased this guy out of his house. That's how you deal with problems, baby. You threaten them with a sword. And shout out to his mom for getting him the best gift that he's gonna have to hide from every single girlfriend. Number 1 on our list, haunted home. So if you're being kept awake by spirits for 6 nights in a row, you should probably start looking for some listings. Nobody likes bad roommates, living or dead. This guy was having just that happen to him and decided to vlog his whole experience. The best part about this is he said he would continue to vlog the experience if people continued to like and subscribe. If you're gonna put yourself through some spooky torment, you might as well get paid for it, baby. The freakiest part about this video is when his phone flies off the receiver.
Figure out what's going on, and it's happened a couple times already. And I don't know.
Now I understand how this guy is able to endure this paranormal punishment. He has a corded home phone. If he's willing to put up with that, that means he's willing to put up with anything. Those things are so annoying.
Number 10 is the figure. This one comes from Johnny, and no, not Johnny from Top 10 Nerd, just regular other Johnny. He said when he was 14 he lived in this house that had an attic which would always quietly creak. No one ever went up there since it was always locked, and it was filled with just random ancient stuff anyway, so no one was even bothered either. One night Johnny's parents were out of town and his friend Cameron slept over. They played video games, ordered pizza, watched TV, etc. and stayed up late. You know how little boys do. But by 3 a.m. they heard what they thought were footsteps in the attic. Scared to death but also too nervous to check it out, they just convinced themselves it was the oldness and distracted themselves by watching TV. 2 minutes later they heard a huge slam and the sound of shattering glass in the kitchen, so they ran in there to find nothing. Nothing was broken, nothing was out of place, it was just the strangest thing. 10 minutes later they heard super loud footsteps in the attic and thought, okay, now we have to check it out. So they got a flashlight and walked towards the attic stairs, and as they pointed it up towards the top of the stairs, they went pale. At the top of the stairs was a tall black figure that was about 8 feet tall. They just stood there watching them and grinning at them, and then it just disappeared into thin air. The boys called the police and they found no traces of anyone in the house. But that could have easily been like Slender Man's brother or cousin, I swear to God. Coming in at number 9 is the lady in the pink dress. Always a lady, and I'm pleasantly surprised she's in a pink dress this time, not a white one. Shared by Reddit user TwistedSTL636, they said they had a huge Catholic family and this story happened to them in the 80s. There was a huge party at the user's grandma's house, and his great-grandma lived with her grandma as she had dementia and so she needed the care. A bunch of aunts and uncles were cleaning the house after the party and the great-grandma went to her room. At about 3 a.m. she came out and she said, "There's a man outside my window." The group go to her room, look out the window, and find no one. Outside the window was just a bench, and so blaming it on her dementia, the group told her to go back to sleep. She came out literally a second later again saying, "There's a man at my window," and again the same thing happened. They went to the window, checked, there was no one there. They finally asked her what she was seeing, and she said he wanted her to come outside and meet the pretty lady on the bench wearing the pink dress. At this point they went out and actually searched outside and found nothing, so one of the aunts actually ended up sleeping next to the great grandma, you know, for supervision purposes. The next day the user's grandma gets a call saying the great grandma's sister died the night before. The grandma asked some questions, you know, like what happened, was she sick, etc. And the family replied saying, "We don't know, but she definitely saw it coming since she fell asleep in bed wearing her favorite pink dress." At number 8 we have the eyeless boy. This one's from an anonymous guy who shared that when he was 10 years old he woke up in bed at around 3 a.m. to the sound of someone coming into his room and sitting on the edge of his bed. He assumed it was his mum, but when he opened his eyes, a boy without eyes was just sitting there. Black holes for sockets, just straight up sitting there. They stared at each other for a while and then the guy blinked and the boy was gone. 5 years later his girlfriend came over to do some work and she slept over that night. Again at around 3 a.m. she suddenly sat up, pointed to the corner of the ceiling and then went back to sleep. When he finally got her awake she said, "On the wall I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in a Spider-Man pose just staring at me." And remembering the boy he had seen 5 years prior, he freaked out and told her the story. Now fast forward another 5 years and at this point he has a 2-year-old kid with the same girlfriend. They were living in his old house and his daughter started waking up at 3 a.m. every night and talking. But she'd say the same thing every single night, and one night the guy just playfully asked her, you know, like, "Who are you talking to?" And she said, "It's a little boy, he's nice, he's lost and looking for his mommy." And honestly I didn't even feel bad for the ghost kid until that, like that's so sad. That broke my heart. Either way the daughter kept seeing the little boy every night till the family eventually moved house, so there's that. But I wonder what happened to his eyes though, that's a bit sus. Filling our number 7 slot is the neighbor. This was from Redditor Racing Barracarts, who said their neighbor died a month ago, and after she died really weird things started happening in the user's house and her other neighbors' houses. The user started hearing shuffling up and down her hallway at 3 a.m. and she assumed it was always her roommate, but then she found out that her roommate worked overnight, so he was never even home at that time. The roommate moved out and things went even more downhill. The user started hearing a knocking at her front door every night at 3 a.m. She'd check outside and no one would be there, so initially she just thought she was being ding-dong ditched until one time. And yes, we've all ding-dong ditched, let's face it, let's admit it right now. This one time the knock came, she went to check, no one was there, and as she was closing the door the knock came back again and the door was partially open, so she knew for sure there was no one outside. After that the user would sleep 2 hours a night max because she was so scared. Other things started happening, like her windows would slide open, her drawers would close by themselves. Months later her and her fiance were about to go to bed when they saw a shadow figure run into the room, into their closet. A few minutes later it came outside and lay in between them and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" As clear as day. Now the ghosts and the occurrences aren't the neighbor who died, but they all did start because she died. Now all the users' neighbors claim the knocking happened to them too, but as old grandmas they all just dismissed it as ding-dong ditching, which it's not. Now at number 6 is Bill. This one's from Reddit user CallMeBlue213, who said 6 years ago he was visiting some family in Alaska. He borrowed a car to drive there and ended up losing control and hitting a tree. It was absolutely freezing and there was no point staying in the car any longer as it was 3 a.m. now and the windows were smashed, so it wasn't even warm inside. He went outside and saw some headlights coming his way and flagged the car down. It ended up being a trucker named Bill who thankfully dropped the user off at a small town 10 miles ahead. When the user got off he said his thank yous and his byes to Bill and then went into a little restaurant to eat. He told the waitress that a trucker named Bill had helped him and she said that was impossible since only one trucker drove down down that road called Bill, and he had died 6 years before that. Chills went up his spine, goosebumps covered him completely. The waitress even described Bill for the user and the descriptions matched completely. Good guy Bill. Honestly, I don't mind ghosts at all when they're nice and helpful like this. When they're mean and possessing you, that it's just like, no, there's no need for that, man, like stop. Coming in at number 5 is the motion detector. This one comes from Daniela, who said there are motion detectors all over her family house. For a solid 3-month period, Daniela lived alone in her house while her dad lived with his girlfriend. One night she was sleeping at the girlfriend's house, and at around 3 a.m. the burglar alarm went off at her own house. The police informed them the motion detector had gone off in Daniela's dad's room even though no one was there. Her dad assumed it was broken and had the whole system replaced, but the same thing happened a few days later at the same time. He replaced it again, and it happened again, and after that point they just gave up. Each time it went off at 3 a.m. and no one would be present in the room, and Daniela was 100% sure it was a spirit of her mum who had passed away when she was younger, because according to her, she's haunting them because everyone they knew hated her dad's new girlfriend, so it was probably like a warning sign or something. At number 4 are the eyes. This one comes from Lily, who said that when she was around 4 or 5 years old, quite scared of the dark, so she'd sleep in between her parents. Her parents' bed was right in front of the bathroom door, and one night she woke up at 3 a.m. and just couldn't get back to sleep. Now she sat up and looked into the bathroom and saw a huge pair of red and orange glowing eyes staring back at her, almost burning a hole in her because of how laser focused they were. Lily tried waking up her parents, but they just wouldn't wake up. She started freaking out when she heard a woman's voice calling out to her from the bathroom. She assumed the nice voice belonged to the ugly eyes, and although she doesn't remember what it said, they were motherly things. Either way, she was horrified, and the next day she told her parents what had happened, and they told her it was a nightmare. Of course they did. Of course they said that. Honestly, I feel like it could have been like the ghost of a scorned mother who lost her own child and was trying to like abduct Lily maybe. Like it was saying motherly things, it was staring holes through her, like what else could it have been? Do you guys have any thoughts? Let me know. Filling our number 3 slot is the melody. This story is from Roy, who said he was playing on the trampoline with his friend Jay, and Jay was telling him how his sister sometimes hears their grandparents' piano play by itself when she's home alone. Mind you, they were hanging out at Jay's grandparents' house that day, and so Roy was like, that's bullshit, and didn't believe him. Later on, Roy went in to get his iPad, and as he was making his way downstairs to the front door, he starts hearing the piano play. It wasn't just a random few notes. Roy was out here listening to some Fur Elisa like melody. He ran out of the house and found Jay's dad outside painting the house, not having heard He gave Jay the iPad and told him that he definitely believed him, and they went about their day. That night, Roy was sleeping over and everyone was asleep in the house when around 3 a.m. Roy started hearing the piano play again. He wanted to see it in front of his eyes to really know it wasn't a hoax, so he made his way to the basement where the piano was. He opened the door and went inside and literally watched this piano play itself. The door behind him closed and then wouldn't open again, and Roy just stood there scared as hell watching this piano play. 5 minutes later, when the piano stopped, the door opened and he ran upstairs and cried. The only people who knew how to play the piano were Jay's grandma, who was dead, and his grandpa, who didn't live in that house. Jay told Roy how his grandma always wanted to play for him, but he was always too small and would run around and just not listen to her. Well, she sure as shit made Roy listen, didn't she? Just locked him in the basement there. Please don't lock it, grandma, that's a bit scary, isn't it? Just let him hear you play. Now at number 2 is Happy Birthday. This one's from Reddit user bhoppy20, who said right after he graduated college, he was staying with his girlfriend at her sister's house. They slept in the basement while everyone else slept in their own rooms, and at around 3 a.m. he gets woken up by the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs to the basement. Curious as to who would come down at that time, he opened his eyes to see a man with long dark hair sitting at the foot of his bed. Mans look like a moonlit anime character out here. Either way, he was shocked but also adult enough to assume he was just sleepy and seeing things, so he just went back to bed. The next morning he told his girlfriend about his dream, and she freaked out and said, "Oh my god, we forgot to make a cake for my brother," except she only had one sister. Apparently, years ago when she lived in Vietnam, her parents had miscarried her little brother, and so to honor him they would bake him a cake every year on his birthday. But the night before they'd forgotten to do so the whole family agreed the boyfriend must have seen the brother all grown up and sad about not getting his cake that year. The boyfriend was also pissed he had no idea about the brother to begin with, but that's a fight for another day. And finally, at number 1 is Slenderman 2.0. This one's from Redditor B4455, who said when she was 7 years old she shared a room with her youngest sister. One night their parents had put them to sleep, but she just couldn't fall asleep. Her sister was fast asleep while she was just staring at the ceiling. Story of my life, honestly, I do that all the time. Either way, after staring at the ceiling, then the walls, she looked at the clock and realized it was 3 a.m. She decided to, really just close her eyes and try her best to fall asleep. Before she did, her eyes scanned the door and saw that someone was standing there. An enormously tall figure, as tall as the doorway itself. It had long arms and legs and had no facial features whatsoever. It was just glowing yellow, not moving, not talking. She hid under the covers because at that age that's the best protection you can think of, and when she looked out again it was still there. She did this twice more before screaming her lungs out. Her dad ran into the room straight through the figure and asked what was wrong. The figure had disappeared and she never ended up seeing it again, but the sighting scarred her so much she still can't sleep alone or with the lights fully off. Extremely tall, featureless, long-limbed man figure. That is most definitely Slenderman himself. Confirmed. It's him. He got into the house. He's out of the game. I'm kidding, I know he's real, I know it's not just a game.